Good morning again. I got two of you still awake. All right, very good. Let's give one more just shout of congratulations and applause for our graduates this morning, can we? It's a good thing. I'm proud of you all and the accomplishment you've done, and just it's exciting to know. Although, every year we come around to a graduation Sunday, it makes me stop and realize how many years it's been since I was in that place getting recognized as a senior. Next year, it'll be 20 years of my high school reunion. For some of you, it's been a few years longer than that. 50th, all right. I'm not in your league yet, Mary Jane. Okay. All right. But I do, and I'm sure all of you remember that time when you finished high school and it's, there's just that place in life, whether you go off to college or do something else, it's a huge mark in your life of, growing up. I'm about to go on and do something, about to kind of, blaze your own path. And I remember that time. I remember that feeling of graduating and I was going to go off to college and knowing I'm leaving home and excited about what's going to happen. About, where am I going to go? What decisions am I going to make? And, where am I going to live? And who am I going to marry? And all those kind of things. There's an exciting kind of turning point in life of, leaving the nest a little bit and getting to go make some of my own decisions and make a path. But I did remember in that time, and I'm sure each of you remember that time as well, of hoping that as you kind of go out into the world and whatever the next, 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years will hold, that you make your mark on life. Those first, 18 or so years, you're kind of under the covering of parents or, family, and you've got some things over you. But you go out and you start doing things on your own, and you say, I hope I make a mark. I hope I do something worthwhile. I hope it's, that I don't just waste my days and waste my life. And I know that's what our graduates hope for as well. That they go out and whatever they do next, whatever their project, they don't just go and waste their time, but they go and make their mark. Now, as I bring this up, I realize we're also concluding a sermon series today in the book of Ruth. We've been talking about this for a few weeks. And actually it works out perfectly that today is the Sunday that we conclude this series, because even though I had not planned this, I just love how God does amazing things, that the kind of the lessons that we pick up from this final part of Ruth teach us some awesome lessons about how to make our mark on life. And that's part 4 as we get into this sermon series of Ruth. How to make your mark on life. And this teaches our lesson of what are the things you can do that really are going to make a difference. Not that you just lived your days out and forgotten quickly after you're gone, but that you made a difference. And folks, that's still true for us, whether you're graduating high school or you're about to you just had your 50th reunion from it doesn't matter. All of us, if we're still drawing breath, we can make a mark on this life, and so we should. We should make a difference. Our life should not be just one that was wasted. Now, I realize that, we're not talking about accolades from man. We don't need to be praised in front of others. We want, God knows the deeds of our life, and He's the one that judges whether we make our mark on life, whether we really did what He wanted us to do. But that should still be our aim, to make a difference, to not just waste our days, but to live in such a way that we please God with our actions and that we've made a difference. And as we come to the conclusion part of this story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz and all the things that have been happening, we really kind of are able to see how it concludes, but then step back and realize that the way they lived and the things they did made a mark on their life and a lasting impact, and the things they did are things you and I can do. They hold a great blessing for us. Now, I realize that as we've been going through this for a few weeks, not all of you have been here this whole time. You may have missed out. So as we've done in the previous weeks, let's take just a few seconds to review the story of Ruth in case it's been a while since you studied it. Remember, it was the story of Ruth, who is a woman from a foreign land, from Moab, and her mother-in-law, Naomi, right? Naomi lost her husband. They lost her 2 sons. One of them was Ruth's husband. They come back to Bethlehem in Israel, where Naomi was from, and where Naomi was from, and brought Ruth with her. Forgive me if I mixed a couple names up in there, getting all straight in my head. Where Naomi was originally from, and brought Ruth, the foreigner, with her back to Israel. But they're poor, destitute, broken, and have nothing. But Ruth has the attitude of, God's got this. It's all under His care and control. She goes out and says, I'll pick up the leftovers from the field God leads me to, and He'll provide. Even though her mother-in-law, even though Naomi was broken and said, I'm bitter, I've got nothing left in the tank, I'm done with this life. And God leads Ruth to the field of Boaz, a rich ruler, a great righteous man, a godly man. And not only does she get enough food just by gleaning in the fields to make her next meal, but Boaz sees her. He's heard of her nature, her character, the good things she's done, and he blesses her. He provides for her in safety and provisions and food, all that. And Ruth and Naomi see God's blessings once again. Naomi starts to wake up from her depression and sadness. And as we looked at it last week, we looked at my favorite chapter, Ruth chapter 3, of how Naomi was the one that said, hey, you need a redeemer, right? You need a redeemer to redeem our family that has been broken through death. You've lost your husband. There were no children. We have nothing. You need in that culture, this person, a family member, come in and redeem and to buy back all that had been lost. And Naomi told Ruth, go down to Boaz's threshing floor where they are threshing the wheat at the harvest time. And when he goes to sleep, lay at his feet. And when he wakes up and he sees you, just do what he tells you to do. We said this, that Naomi was putting her daughter-in-law in a position where she knew the man she was putting him before. And Ruth goes down there, lays at his feet, the symbolism of saying, I'm here completely before you. I'm asking for your mercy. I'm asking for your blessing. I'm asking for your covering. But I'm vulnerable before you. And Boaz says, I'm willing to redeem you. This was the marriage proposal we talked about last week. That's the oddest marriage proposal you've ever seen, laying at somebody's feet while they're sleeping. But that's what it was in the Old Testament in that situation. And Boaz says, yes, I'll redeem you. I want to marry you. I want to, provide for your family. He sees God at work in all this. But we realized at the end of last week, as we were studying through this, the complication in the plan, in the story, right? Boaz says, I want to redeem you, but in this custom of ours, this Jewish tradition of levirate marriage, of where a family will redeem somebody that has had their husband die without children, he says, it's got to be the closest available family member. And he says there is a redeemer, a guardian redeemer, a kinsman redeemer, a family member who is closer to you than I am, who technically has rights above mine if he wants to redeem you and your family and all this. And so we need to go check with him first. It's the complication. I imagine, Ruth is going, wow, God, you are awesome providing, and then kind of has a moment of worry and maybe a bit of panic when she realizes that the man that God had led her to and all the provisions, suddenly there's, wait a second, it could be somebody else? How is this going to work out? And I love that Ruth had that kind of, God's got this type of attitude of saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but God will provide. And so we get to the last chapter of the book of Ruth, this just small book of the Old Testament, and we see how it resolves. The narrative kind of switches over to Boaz and his decision, his intent to go settle the matter, go talk to the other guy. This other one who has this right above him to go and buy the land of the family and to marry Ruth ahead of him and redeem this whole family line. He's going to go handle the issue. But what I want you to see as we study through this thing, I know we're dealing with customs and traditions maybe that aren't common to us, that aren't maybe easily understood to our culture. What I want you to see is some common threads of how the names of the people we know, Ruth and Boaz, how they act and what's their heart in these situations. And we're going to see as we go through this The things they did that made their mark. Because obviously we're still talking about these people today. In fact, as we mentioned last week, that really the blessing of the story of Ruth and Boaz was not only them coming together and God providing in that, but what God produced in that marriage. Remember who was the great-grandchild of Ruth and Boaz? King David. It was the line that brought David, and it was the line that would lead to Jesus. You know, God redeemed this foreign woman who had lost everything through this godly man who provided, and did all these wonderful things that led to the King David, and ultimately it was the family line of Jesus. It was an awesome reminder of what God produced. So they definitely left their mark, right? But the things they did, the attitudes they had, how they approached this can teach us a lot. So we're going to look this morning to conclude the series of Ruth, and we're in Ruth chapter 4. We're going to read a few verses and talk about it. We're going to try to keep it real simple and just kind of go through a few things this morning. Let's look at it together. Starting in verse 1, it says this. Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, turn aside, friends, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. I'll stop for just a second before we go on. I promise again, I'm not going to stop at every single verse this morning, but I always love pointing out a few things. It says, so Boaz, he immediately after leaving Ruth, after she wakes up in the field, he sends her home and he says, I'm going to go settle this matter. He doesn't waste any time. He goes to the city gates. That's where all the legal business was done. That's where all the power players of the time hung out. You went to the gate. You stood there and you're ready to do business for the day. And obviously he's a powerful man. He is there. And I love we don't always get the context in our language today, but it says, and behold. It's the original Hebrew. It did this once before. It's kind of saying, and what do you know? Here, as soon as Boaz gets there, here comes the other guy. This other family member of Ruth's passed on husband. By chance, all of a sudden, what do you know? It just turned out. This happened back in chapter 2 also. We talked about it a little bit then of when Ruth showed up at the field of Boaz. It used that same Hebrew language of saying, and it just happened to be. Did you know the Bible can be sarcastic at times? That's literally what's going on. It's not just, the Bible is not trying to say, oh, what a great coincidence it worked out that way. No, it's using the language to kind of get your attention and you're like, oh yeah, it just happened to be. No, God, it didn't say God brought it about, but look, the Scripture's trying to point you to see that God is orchestrating the things. That God has brought it about. That this, as soon as Boaz says, I'm going to act on this, I'm going to go do it, here comes the other guy. Now, I want us to hear this. This is really important for our graduates, but it's important for all of us. I know sometimes we struggle with knowing how God is leading and where is God leading and what do you want us to do, God. Determining the will of God can sometimes be a difficult thing and mysterious. And God, do you want me to go here? Do you want me to go there? And, here's a situation, they're facing that. Boaz is saying, oh, God, what do you want me to do in this situation? And here's just all of a sudden, it just happened to be, it just kind of worked out. These surprises, these things I say when God is in it, it flows, right? When God is in it, when God is doing it, the things you need to line up start lining up. And for our graduates, they're going out, as you go out to do the things you got to do, and you're facing those tough decisions, you got to look for, the rest of the world says coincidences. Oh, that's nice how that worked out. Isn't that interesting? God is moving. And we need to know that. I struggle all the time going, okay, God, what am I supposed to do here? I can either force my way or I could look for the thing that I'm going to do where it just happens to be by chance. Oh, and behold, it's working out. God is doing it. And it's in those situations we start to go, God, you are in this. I'm going to go where you are. So it's no mistake that as Boaz, as soon as he arrives and he's determined to handle the situation, he didn't wait hours and hours and hours. Like he gets in place and then, behold, here he comes. God is doing awesome things. When I was talking about this 2 weeks ago, how I love how just the coincidence of things. I mentioned in the sermon how a lot of times John will tell me after I preach something, he goes, "We just talked about that in youth." And, John told me he nearly stood up that day and said that morning, 2 Sundays ago, when I shared this very thing of by chance, watching for God's coincidences and how this happens with our youth group and his teaching all the time, he told me that same morning in youth group, he had brought up the same thing. He goes, "Do y'all know how it's amazing so many times we'll talk about something and the pastor goes and talks about the same thing in the sermon, and watch that he'll do it today." And then he didn't tell me he said that. And then the same thing happened. He said the youth started turning around and looking at him going, "How'd you know that?" When those things happen, it's not coincidence. It just so happened, not by chance, God is in it. And we want to recognize those things. So I'm pointing this out. I'm spending a few minutes here in just one little verse because I want you to see that I imagine for Boaz there that day, and he's wanting to get this resolved, wondering how it's going to work out. And it's like he gets there, and here comes the guy. Of all the guys he needs to speak to, there he is. I imagine he's smiling and is going, "Yeah, God, you got this." That's how we know where to go and to walk in God's will when we see those little things. We see the little things that it just, by chance, it just so happened. Well, not just that, it's God. We want to go there. I love that we see, "Come here, friend, let's sit down. God is in this," and it begins to talk. Let's move on now. We spent so much time talking about one little verse. Let's see how this begins to play out. "And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, 'Sit down here.' So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, 'Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is one beside you to redeem it, and I come after you.' And he said, I will redeem it." Now we're going to stop here again for just a moment and talk about this, because especially if you've been going through this thing of Ruth, it probably needs a little explanation. So Boaz sits down with this other guy. He's an unnamed guy, and that's actually important. We'll get to it in a little bit. But whoever this other family member is, this one who's closer to Elimelech, the guy who died, whoever he is, they sit down, they get 10 elders, so there's witnesses, because Boaz, he's going to live above reproach in this. He doesn't want to do a shady deal. He makes sure there's other people there to witness what's going on. And he says, "Hey, you know Naomi. You know this family member of ours. And she's back from Moab. And she's selling a piece of land." Now, if you've been with me, you go, wait a second, that's really not been the focus. It's about whether or not Ruth, the foreigner daughter-in-law, is to marry Boaz. Why is he talking about a piece of land to be sold? Again, we don't understand some of the tradition customs. When Ruth came and said, "I need to be redeemed. Would you be our guardian redeemer, kinsman and redeemer? Would you marry me?" was the thing. It was not just about marriage. It was you accept, the whole family and the land. Land is a huge, big deal in Israel. And in fact, you don't ever sell a piece of land, right? Somebody can hold on to it for a while, things like that, but you don't ever truly sell a piece of land. And so when she was being redeemed, as, hey, not only do we want a marriage to come about, but we want you to take over the whole estate. It wasn't some huge big estate, but for whatever it was, the house and the land and whatever else they owned. It was kind of a package deal. Now, why is Boaz talking about just buying this piece of property or redeeming it, and not about the marriage? Well, think about it. He's a smart guy. Boaz isn't going to go to this other dude and say, "Hey, you know this other girl from Fort Land, you want to go ahead and marry her?" You don't start a conversation that way. He thinks about it and says, "Well, let me ease you into this." Hey, you know this family member? The guy, yep, I know who you're talking about. Here's the land. They need it redeemed. You are closer than I am. If you want to, you can buy it back. You can redeem it. You can take it over. If not, I'm here. I'm the next in line. And what does the guy say? The unnamed guy say, I'll do it. I'll redeem it. I'll be the redeemer. Now, I don't know if Ruth was anywhere in the area, but if she was and heard that, you got to think her heart just sank. She was like, wait a second. God led me to Boaz. God has been providing. He's doing all of this. And now we hear this other guy who has got the right to say he'll do it is saying yes. Oh, no. It's not working out the way I had hoped it would. But we're not done. Now, I want you to note, again, I'm hopefully setting you up to understand the deeper meaning here. There's a reason that this guy's name, this other family member, his name is not written down, not recorded. We don't know who he is. We know who Boaz is. We know who Ruth is. We know who Naomi is. We know who the kids are out of the relationship. We don't know who this guy is. And I'm going to tell you right now, begin to make sense in just a moment. It's because, I believe it's because of his heart in the matter. His heart was, what can I get out of it? I'll show you why that's true in just a moment. How is this good for me? Where's the value for me? What do I get? And Boaz and Ruth, that's not their heart. They have both shown themselves to be of, I want to do for someone else. Right? Ruth started with her mother-in-law who was broken hurting. I'm there for you. Boaz saw Ruth, the foreigner woman who had nothing, and says, I want to be there for you. But this guy is all about what I can get for me. So when he hears about, I get a piece of land, which means I get the interest off of it, I can rent it out, I can do all these things. Right now, the proposition seems really good for him. Hey, I get a piece of land. I get to add to whatever withholdings I have, and I get to look good in front of everybody. I'm going to be a redeemer. I'll redeem it. Come on, bring it on. I'll take it. It's a good deal. Oh, Boaz has to say, there's something else. Let's read. Let's move on to the next verse here. Then Boaz said, the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Again, stop right there and see what Boaz said. He goes, all right, the land's not the only thing. He says the land's really good, right? But remember, if you're going to be a redeemer, if you're going to redeem the family by getting their land, there's also this woman, Ruth. He uses Ruth the Moabite. Remember, he'd always call her Ruth, my daughter. He'd always use a loving, endearing term about her. But now he's telling the verses, Ruth, this foreigner, he wants him to understand, he wants to see how he's going to react with that same mercy or love, or is he going to get tripped up on who she is, her background. Ruth the Moabite, she's a widow. Her husband, again, a family member of ours, is dead. They did not have children. And so you don't only just have to redeem and buy back this field and their property and get that. It also, you need to marry her. And you also need to have children with her because it's going to continue that family line that was lost. Remember, that was the other part of it, that a marriage that came out of this, that the offspring really belonged, was viewed as the family of the guy who had died, not the new husband. It was primarily to the one who already passed on. So you're going to not only get a field, you're going to get a wife. Now, the guy was all about getting the field. How do you think he's going to feel about getting the wife? Right? The deal has changed. Keep going on. Let's see what happens here. Then the Redeemer said, surprise, surprise, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. You notice here that, go back for us for 1 second, you notice here that his excuse for saying, I can't redeem it, it doesn't hold any water. Wait a second. He wanted the land, he wanted the field, what he got out of it, and now, because he gets a wife out of the deal, it's going to mess up my inheritance? He's going to suddenly, wait a second. It doesn't just what I get out of it. Now I'm really doing something for somebody else. As soon as the deal changed to not my benefit, but really I'm benefiting somebody else, I'm giving them mercy and grace and taking care of them. I don't want it. He's like tripping over himself to get out of this deal. He's like, no, it'll mess up my taxes. I can't go there. I don't want to do this. He's like, get out of here. You can have her. This is a guy who didn't make his mark. We don't know his name. He gets talked about in this small little thing of, passing up on a deal because it was okay when it was for him, but he didn't want it when it was a part of blessing somebody else. Do you see where I'm beginning to go with this, friends? I'm out and I don't want it. I don't want it. You can have it. All right, let's keep going, kind of see how this all happens. We're going to read for a bit here. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy yourself, he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. And Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife to perpetuate, look at this, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers, and from the gate of his native place, you are witnesses to this day. You see, he's doing this for them. Keep going. Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming in your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephratah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Let's keep going this morning. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life, and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. I love that. I love how that works. I mean, the end, isn't that great, where it's, Naomi, kind of where this all started back with, who lost her husband, who lost her sons, now her daughter-in-law is married to another man, but because of this custom, it says, they went back and says, no, this son belongs to you. It carries on the name of your husband that died, and then your son that died. You have been redeemed. All that you thought was lost has been bought back by God. Isn't that awesome? I love that she's there. She becomes the child's nurse. She was there just with that baby on her lap. Her biological grandson, but by custom, her child, people understood that, but who would be the grandfather of David. Sitting there, and remember how this started? At the end of chapter 1, what did Naomi say? Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for my life is bitter. And I got nothing left. She wasn't even thinking that name when she sat and held that baby. But she was thinking about all the things God had bought back. And all the people were rejoicing with her, and they celebrated with her. And wow, how amazing did God use that family line. He chose that place and that family to bring about these wonderful, wonderful things. God is a redeemer. But I go back to the question I asked before. Why would God choose this family? Why would God choose Naomi and Ruth and Boaz to do these awesome things with? Why are their names marked down? Why are they a part of the lineage of David and part of the lineage of Jesus Christ? And why are they part of scriptures that we look at and study today? Because of look at their heart. Look how they made a mark on life. Not by what can be done for me, but how can I redeem and bless and serve someone else? That's how they made a mark, friends. God knew that in their heart. Think about this again. I mentioned this several times over our study. Way back when Naomi was so hurt and broken and bitter, and Ruth says, I'll stay with you. I'll go with you wherever you go. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. There was nothing in Naomi for her to look at and say, I want that. I mean, Naomi was hurting and broken and just everything was down. But Ruth had the heart of, no, I love you, and I want to serve you, and I want to help you, and I want to be there for you. So she gave up what was easy. What was easy for Ruth would have go back to the land she came from, go back to the people she knew, and the customs and the language and all that she knew, and marry some guy from back there. That would have been easy for her. But she says, no, I am called to bless this woman. I'm called to be with her. And when Ruth was out in the field working her tail off, just her fingers ground to the bone, trying to get the last little bit of kernels of wheat that she could find, here comes Boaz. Why should Boaz see this poor foreign woman and do anything for her? Right? He had a reputation. He had high standing in the community. She may have been gorgeous and everything else, but people would pay attention to who he would marry and who he would bless, and everybody else was treating her like a foreigner. But he says, no, Ruth, my daughter, I have heard of what you have done. Now watch what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to bless you. And when Ruth comes back and lays herself at his feet and says, I need to be redeemed. Are you willing to cover me and bless me? And he says, yes, but he says, we got to handle this situation the right way, in God's way. Let's go check with this other guy. And the other guy says, no, wait a second. It was all good when I get something out of it, but I don't want to deal with this foreign woman and take a wife. Never mind. He exits the scene as fast as he came on. But Boaz says, no, I am here to bless her. I'm here to serve her. I want to be a redeemer to her. And God knew that in his heart, and God orchestrated things, and God used that and brought about the line. He chose this family to place his son Jesus in. I think that should speak a little bit to who the family is. So that takes us back to our point. How do you make your mark in this life? Whether you're heading off after high school, or whether you're in retirement or anywhere in between, how do you make your mark in this life? It's not about trying to get as much as you can for you. That's what the world says, right? The world says, go out there and earn as much as you can, get as much glory as you can, get the best house you can, get all the other things you want. Do for you. Take care of you. If a good deal comes along that blesses you, snatch it up. Everybody else, their needs are secondary. Yeah, if you got enough time, if you got enough leftover money, if you got enough extra here, go ahead and bless somebody else, but not before first taking care of you. You are number one. Do it. It's you. I'm going to tell you, when it comes to the big view of things, when it comes to God's view of things, heavenly view of things, those people are not making their mark in this life. They exit the scene as quick as they came in. You want to make your mark? Be a person who says, how can I redeem you? How can I bless you? What are your needs? And I'm going to go and help meet those needs. And I'm going to serve you. And I'm going to love you. I'm going to look for the person who needs mercy and grace. And I'm going to be there for them even when it costs me something. God chooses those people to do amazing things in their life. Things that way outlast their physical life on this earth. You make your mark by saying, I'm not number one. I'm not the primary focus of all things. It's God first, and then others. You know, and then I'm not even going to really worry about what I get. God will provide, and if I'm blessing others, I'll get the blessing in return, but I'm going to be a servant. I'm not going to be worried about meeting my need and getting my thing done, but I'm going to be vigilant about looking at somebody else and how can I serve you? How can I bless you? And you will make a mark deeper and last longer than you will ever realize if you're that kind of person. I love the story of Ruth. I just love it. A story of a young woman who needed to be redeemed. There have been a lot of people who need to be redeemed, who've lost something and want God to buy it back. But God chose this young woman, this foreigner, this woman who had nothing, because it started in her heart of saying, I want to bless and serve someone else. And he brought more people into the picture of that same heart and brought about these amazing things. God redeemed it and made that an awesome life worth living. God's the Redeemer. God's the Restorer. But you know who He loves to use in that? Those who are not so self-absorbed they can't see past themselves. God wants to see you. How can I bless? How can I serve? Even when I got nothing, what can I do for somebody else? God loves to redeem in that kind of heart. Make your mark by putting yourself second. Let's pray together this morning. Would you bow your heads with me today and just take a moment to begin to go before the Lord in prayer and reflection. Our praise team will come up and lead us in song in just a moment. Before they do, I want you to take these few moments together and begin to talk to the Lord. Just with heads bowed and eyes closed, just begin to talk to Him even as I share with you. Because, friends, we all need that moment that says, wake up, stop living for yourself. Too many times have I had those moments where God says, you're trying to serve, you put yourself number one, you're on the top pedestal right now. That's the easy thing to do. That's the accepted thing to do. We live in a world that almost nobody will get on to you if you try to take care of yourself first. But God is showing us that part of His plan of redemption is using people who've got servants' hearts. Of how can I bless somebody else? What can I give to them even when I don't have much to give? How can I meet them with grace in the time of their need? How can how can God use me to redeem something that's in their life? You take the focus off you and you put it on those around you and say, God, how would you have me serve? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And watch how the things just happen to work out by chance. Isn't it amazing how God begins to bring those things about? God is working. He is preparing. But He's preparing you to serve. God will take care of your needs. He will take care of the things you need. But He's trying to prepare you and call you and move you to a place of serving others. I know that no matter what age you are here today, no matter what part of life you're in, I know that you want to say you lived a life that made its mark, that made a difference. That's not one just quickly forgotten. You don't be one that exited as fast and unnoticed as you came, right? You want something that leave behind that is remembered and a blessing long after you've left this earth. It happens not by serving yourself, but letting God use you as a redeemer in other people's lives, a blesser in their lives, a server in their lives. But you've got to be willing to take yourself off the top step. I pray that's your heart today and that you're sharing that with God as we pray together this morning. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be in your house. We thank you for this day of celebration for our graduates, to see that they're at this place of going to the next thing. We pray for them specifically, Father, because they are in that moment of life that they're just right on that edge of going out and making some decisions and having some life-changing turns here and there. God, and even though they still have a covering over them of a church and a family, they're going to start and go out and on their own, God, and to a degree, and blaze their own trail and do some of the things on their own. Father, but I pray for them that they would not be ones to be about how much can I get and how quick can I get it. But Father, would you build on the foundation that we've already seen in their lives and continue them to be even more of ones of how can I serve someone else? How can I bless them? How can I meet their need? How can I help them reach their goals? God, we know these will be lives that make a difference. And I pray that is a word of encouragement for all of us today, Father, that none of us would be so self-absorbed, that we could not look to the needs of others and see that, even if it costs us something, Father. Let us not be so about what do we get out of the deal, but, Father, how we can bless somebody else. That let us use us as redeemers. Use us to help buy things back in people's lives, God. Things they thought were lost and broken. You're the one doing it. God, but we ask you to use us in that place, in that role. God, I pray that each of us walk out of here today having a knowledge, having it in our hearts and our minds of a place to go serve, a person to go help. That even today we'd make a mark. We'd make a difference, not by what we gained, but by what we gave. God, we thank you for this. We thank you for this blessing. We ask your presence upon us in Jesus Christ. Amen.